Hi, everybody. How are you doing? Are you hanging in there? How do you think we're doing? Do you think we're winning the war on the coronavirus? I think it's interesting, this concept of winning a war against a virus. It's kind of bizarre to me. But we're a culture that is obsessed with winning, aren't we? We all want to be winners. I mean, the measure of success is whether you're a winner or not. We build huge football and baseball stadiums and basketball stadiums, and we support the winner. And everything in those stadiums caters to the winners. Everyone wants to be a winner. Our political arena is all about who's winning and who's losing. And the measure of success is if you win. And we're so obsessed with it that we make sure all the kids now get there. Everybody's a winner. Everybody's a winner. Everybody's entitled to win. And wouldn't it be great if we could all win? We try to make a story about winning out of the Easter story too. We start out with Palm Sunday when Jesus is going to Jerusalem, and there's the procession, and all of his followers are, shouting praises of adoration. And then the next Sunday, we love Easter Sunday because we can say he is risen. He is risen indeed. And we love the fact that Jesus was the winner over death, that God was the winner over hate. But it's harder for us to think about Good Friday. It's hard for us to think about Maundy, Thursday. It's hard for us to think about Jesus as a loser. Because if we think about Jesus as a loser, what does that mean for us? But I think if we can take a moment, especially in the reality we're living right now, that it might be actually a word of encouragement for us to consider this. The society that Jesus lived in that ancient culture, whereas our vision of success is money and power to a certain extent, theirs was honor and shame. And I'm talking about public honor and public shame. You were born in to a certain class of honor. And Jesus would have been born into a very humble portion of honor because he was from Nazareth, and that was just kind of a nowhere town. Remember, in one part in scripture, they would say, well, what good can come from Nazareth? So he would have had very humble beginnings, and wherever he began, that would be pretty much what would be expected of him. He was the son of a craftsman, and he was a craftsman in himself, so it would have been a humble beginning. The other way you could get honor is if you acquired it by the way you responded to challenges and the way you maneuvered in different situations. And these were always public too. And so we see all through Jesus's teaching and his life of ministry that there would be these questions posed to him, and he would always answer them, and he would perform miracles, and he would answer these questions and challenges with such a grace that it would turn the question of honor around on the people who were questioning him. So by all standards, it seems like Jesus is on his way to being this great winner. And that's what his disciples wanted him to be. They wanted him to be the winner they had been waiting for. They had been existing in an oppressive environment under the Roman Empire rule. And a lot of the religious elite had somewhat compromised themselves in order to keep business as usual going. Everyone was just trying to get along with the winners in order not to be a loser. So when Jesus comes along and he starts to say stuff that's different, it's different than what the Roman Empire was saying. It was not peace through victory, but peace through forgiveness and loving your enemies. What kind of a crazy loser statement is that? And yet people were attracted to it because his presence, his healings, his teachings, they felt heard, they felt seen, they felt included in this message of love. And also, they were hoping that he would be the one that would rise up a great army and defeat the Roman Empire and restore Israel to its natural state. So there may have been great hope on this Palm Sunday that we celebrate when he came into town, that maybe this time things were going to be different. But we would soon find that that was not the case, and Jesus would have known that all along. His heart might have been breaking a little bit as he rode that donkey in, thinking, they're expecting a winner. I don't know if they're ready for the loss that's getting ready to happen. Jesus was by all terms from this point forward a loser. You see, a man of honor would endure all of the uncertainties and shame thrown at him in silence. And yet Jesus goes to the garden and he begs for the cup to be removed from him. And then when he's brought in front of Pilate, and Pilate says, "Are you the king of the Judeans?" He says, "Well, you say it." He doesn't defend himself. What kind of loser doesn't defend himself? His disciples start to scatter when they see this, but this is not the way it was supposed to go. He was supposed to be winning by now. It's definitely looking like it's going the other direction. Now, Pilate was trying to navigate. He was between a rock and a hard place. His wife had told him she had this dream and that, Jesus was innocent. He shouldn't have any part of this humiliation and execution of this man. And yet, all of these people, perhaps many of them had been shouting praises and calling him a winner 2 days ago, were now calling for his life. This was part of a process that would happen when someone got too big for their place in the world, got too much honor, if they started to cause too much chaos. And the authorities could not allow this to continue. But they had to do it through public humiliation. Strip away a person's dignity a little bit at a time and in public. They mocked him. The soldiers took him and beat him, made fun of him, taunted him, made a crown of thorns for him, and then made him carry his own cross to where he would be executed. This was all intentional public humiliation for the loser, so that they would never forget who the winner was. Jesus was so much of a loser that he couldn't even carry his cross the entire way. And they compelled someone else to carry it for him that last mile, which that was a provision in the Roman law that soldiers could compel people to carry their military equipment, which is what the cross was, for this last mile. Then they strung him up in between two bandits, and that's the word that's used. And it would have been used intentionally because that word bandit mostly meant a social rebel rouser. Someone who was trying to create an uprising against the Roman Empire. And there were all kinds of these little revolts that were bubbling up before the complete destruction in 70 of the temple. And so they would have strung him up between two men that had been accused of that. And what's even worse, you remember back when they were crying for the release of Barabbas? He was an accused bandit. And so they had traded this loser Jesus for this rebel rouser Barabbas. So he gets strung up, which is public humiliation. This execution was actually quite a spectator sport by some accounts, that people would come to see what position they strung them up in, because sometimes they would string them up in all these different positions, just making fun, just really trying to degrade and strip this person of any shred of honor or dignity that they had left. That's one reason they strung them up naked. Couldn't get much more vulnerable than that. And they would drive the nails through the hands, and that was like the ultimate pinning down of someone's agency. They could no longer even control their own body. This was meant to send a direct message that if you consider creating chaos or trying to have any kind of rebellion against the powers that be, you will be losing like this loser is now. Now, there's one little last shred of honor that was common for people to try to hang on to. The last bit of shred of honor that a person would still have is to be able to endure in silence this total degradation and execution, to be silent unto death, no matter what the pain was, no matter what humiliation was. It was to be silent. And Jesus was such a loser that he couldn't even do that. We're told that he referenced one of the Psalms when he cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" He was completely forsaken and such a loser that he couldn't even do it in silence. He cried out in complete anguish before he died. That's not exactly the message that we like to hear. And we can hardly wait to get to Easter morning, right? And what could possibly be encouraging about this? And how could this possibly matter? Well, this is why it matters. The reason it matters that we fully understand how low Jesus was brought, how much of a loser he was willing to be. It matters because when we lose, when we're afraid, when we can't endure with grace, when we fail, when we are broken, we need to know that we matter. God is love, and Jesus was the embodiment of that love. And it matters that that love was so determined to be steadfast to us, to be faithful to us, that it would be love unto death, that it would be willing to die rather than diminish in its power. It matters because you matter. So that no matter what you go through, no matter what loss that you experience, no matter what humiliation that you experience, you know that love matters with you there. Christ was vulnerable. Christ was vulnerable to the point of death so that we wouldn't have to face anything alone. I've heard it said that sometimes pain can be redeemed. I've heard it said that everything happens for a reason. And I think both of those things, I just don't think those things are helpful, and I don't think that those are true. I don't think that everything happens for a reason. I don't think all pain can be redeemed. Look at the Holocaust. There's no way then you could tie a little bow around that. But knowing that Jesus endured what he endured for us shows us that our pain matters. Our pain matters. Our bodies matter. Our hearts matter. Our lives matter. So Sunday, next Sunday, we'll celebrate resurrection. But for right now, just like we'll celebrate the lifting up of all these things that we're doing right now to try to love our neighbors, what we're doing, by those of us who are not affected by the coronavirus in any way with symptoms, what we're doing by staying indoors, by following the guidelines, is loving our neighbor, showing the people that are in the epicenter and all those places and all those families that are affected by this and all those health workers. We're showing them that they matter, that their pain matters. So I pray this week that you can reflect on that you can reflect on what a gift it was that Jesus was willing to be a loser for us. May you remember this week also that you have been wonderfully and fearfully made by the Creator God, and that you've been lovingly redeemed by Jesus the Christ, and that you're empowered by the Holy Spirit to live into that love and to show your loved ones that they matter. God bless you. I'll see you next week.